Okay, this session will be a little bit lighter. Okay, I'm not really going to show you any kind of specific software. We're going to look a little bit at some of the Autodesk A360 tools. Okay. First thing I am just going to quickly show you is the interactive panorama. So if you go to render in the cloud, and still image, interactive panorama or illuminance. If we select interactive panorama now, render quality final, size 2.25, then what this will do, this will render multiple views, and in Autodesk A360 it puts it together as an interactive panorama that you can kind of pan and move around, which I'll demonstrate. Now this is the one rendering where if you set your size too large, it will not let you send the render because we're limited at 16 credits and this would cost us 27. So as long as you keep it in the 2.25 megapixel size, then it's fine. Okay, I'll just send that one off. These do take quite a long time to render, and they do sometimes fail when they're rendering, so it's something you just have to keep trying, really. Okay, I'll leave that for now. If we go back into our Autodesk A360, they are also now, as you can see at the top, bringing out stereo renderings. I'm not going to get into that, but they are now producing, you can produce renders that are stereographic. So if you view them with a pair of virtual goggles, you have a stereo effect on your eyes, which gives you an impression of depth. So that, that's quite new, but that will get better. I'm going to find you an interactive panorama to show you. I think I've got one in, should have one here. Okay, so anything with this symbol, this sort of arrow, circular arrow thing, is an interactive panorama. So if we open that, just give that a moment. Then this is, I think this is quite a good tool. The other thing to bear in mind with Autodesk A360 is you can share these images. So you've got this share with others control. So if you, for example, if you were producing renderings for a client, you can share them with your client. They don't need Revit to open this. They just open it in a web browser. So you could potentially be sharing these renders with your customers, with your clients. Okay, I did open this yesterday and it worked, so hopefully it will work. Just give it a minute. Okay, while that's thinking, I'll show you something else. Okay, when you have produced a render, then one of the other powerful features in Autodesk A360 is you can re-render that without needing to open Revit. So if we click on that drop-down arrow for this image, re-render using new settings. So without needing to open Revit, we can, for example, change the environment. And what this does, it will put an HDMI sky and an environment onto your model. Now, you have to use that carefully. It works really well if that's an environment that you're not directly looking at. If it's an environment that you see directly out the windows, it can look quite unrealistic. But let's change that, for example, to a riverbank. We can change all of our render qualities. I'll leave that on standard for speed, file format. I'm just going to put that on a medium size. Okay. And we'll start that rendering. So that's now doing a re-render of that image with different settings. Let's go into the other one here. Re-render, and again you could send that again with different different environment maps. Okay, I'll leave that. I won't do that one. We can also play around here, render it as a panorama, stereo panorama if you're using the stereo goggles, solar study, illuminance, turntable. You can play around with all of those. You can adjust the exposure, which is quite helpful. So, what we can do is control how bright or how dark that image is. So if we move the exposure value, we can very quickly alter the exposure, highlights, midtones, shadows, saturation, how kind of bright are the colours. Very useful actually if your model does not have very good quality materials. Often, if you knock that back to a grayscale render, you can get away with that. White point setting. Okay, so you can change all of those settings and re-render it. Okay, those are now re-rendering, which is why it's not showing them. But you know, I think that's quite powerful in terms of being able to quickly customize these renders without needing to open Revit. You could do that on an iPad, for example. You could do it on your phone. You don't have to be on a powerful computer to do this. Let's just have a look at this one again. Render as illuminance. So that was I'll just do that again. This was our view, which is a visualization render. But let's say we want that as an illuminance render, but we don't want to open Revit and go through the Revit process. Render as illuminance. Usual settings, we can change the date and the time here. So let's just change our time. Okay. Units, usual settings there. What sky do you want? Let's do that as a daylight factor sky. Start rendering. Oh, I forgot to change my legend. Too late. Anyway, that's gone. So really quick. Now we've sent these off. They're all queuing up. You know, at this point, you might just go and have a short break, and when you come back, they're all ready. So here's our bicycle view. That one's finished, I think. Yeah, so that was the view that we just tweaked those exposure settings. So there's our original. So there's the original view, which for me was a little bit too bright, probably. The colours were a little bit too bright. We re-rendered that. And, you know, it's a different, different kind of view. Obviously, you can do similar kind of effects in Photoshop, but the benefit here is you're changing those settings and it's rendering it, so it's it's kind of more controllable, really. Okay, let's go back and see if that interactive panorama has finished. No, that's a shame. I'm just going to refresh that. Hopefully this will be finished, but the nice thing about the interactive panoramas is you feel more like you're kind of in the space. You can move your view around within that room, but it's taking a while, unfortunately. What you can do, you see you've got these buttons along the top as well. Here you can filter what kind of views you want to see. So if I filter that to interactive panoramas only, so if I've deselected all the other file types, so I'm just showing interactive panoramas. Let's try it again, see if it will work. Okay, give that a moment. Okay. You can obviously delete your files, so if if it's getting a bit messy in here, you can tidy them up. You can download them. You can download them all. Okay. And all of your renders that you've ever sent will be stored here. They're stored under the file name, the Revit file name. I'm going to try and open a different interactive panorama. Let's see if it will work. While that's doing that, I'll also show you the gallery. So if you go to the gallery here, gallery is just a place where people who are using this service like to show off their work. Okay, you can post your images to the gallery. I find the quality is quite variable. There's some quite poor work in there, and there's some quite good work. Let's have a quick look at one. So there's an interior view. It's okay. As I was saying, it's not photorealistic, but the quality of light is very good. And I do find the gallery it is quite useful sometimes for just kind of browsing through and seeing the kind of work that is being produced. I think the internet is struggling a bit. People put all sorts of things on there. show you this one. No, I'll show you this one actually. This is something to bear in mind in terms of visualizations. We've been talking about daylighting today, but it's very easy to put artificial lights into a Revit project, and quite often doing a visualization at night time with artificial lights can be a little bit easier in terms of materials, because you can obviously you can work with the shadows a bit. The thing about any rendering, any visualization is you have to be quite clever about hiding the parts of that visualization that are not perhaps modeled terribly well. So for example here, all of this is quite dark. Probably that sort of grass is not a good material, but by putting it in the shadows, it's kind of quite convincing. Putting electric lights outside, inside the building, and I think you get quite a powerful kind of image of a project at night. Really quite easy, quite quick to do that. That's quite a good one. I mean, what I'd encourage you to do is just have a look through. The good thing about browsing the gallery here is, because you know this is all produced in Revit, then these visualizations you could achieve yourself. They're not using V-Ray, they're not using 3D Max typically. So these are kind of the quality of images that you could produce yourself in Revit. And you see there the grass is not very good. It's not a very good quality material there. But the building looks pretty convincing, I would say. Okay, let's see if my interactive... No. I'm not going to play. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to share the link with you. Okay. Last night they just opened immediately. Absolutely fine. Let's see. It's not going to work, is it? You put them full screen. So what I was wanting to show you today was to put that full screen, and they're quite impressive the way you can kind of move around that space, but it's not going to happen, is it? Okay, I'll send you the link anyway. Right, a few other things to show you. I've put a few example images up onto Mole. Let's just have a quick look at those. Okay, so if you go under Daylight Simulation and Visualization 1, resource files. I've put some example, there's your sample Revit file that we've been using today. I would encourage you to download that Revit file and have a look at that as an example of quite a complex, sophisticated model. And then under the example images, I've put a few images that have come from that model, just to maybe start you thinking about the kind of range of work that you can produce. So if we start with this one, so this is a site model with the building in place. I won't download it here, but it's actually it's a very high resolution. So this was rendered at 16 megapixels, and which means you can actually zoom into that building and see it in quite a lot of detail. Interestingly, this site was actually modelled in SketchUp and imported into Revit. Now, I'm not suggesting that's the way you should work, but you can do that. And this student just was happier with SketchUp, so he built the model in SketchUp and imported it. But what it does mean is that your import from SketchUp is kind of hollow. So you've not got any solidity to the elements you bring in. Okay? Equally, your site is not solid. But that's an example of a kind of exterior render from Revit. What this student then did was, afterwards, they added a little bit of a depth of field focus blur onto it to make it look a bit more realistic. Okay. And then here, what they've done is, it's a 3D view, and using the section box in Revit, they've chopped the top off the building so that they could give a kind of view inside the building. And then here we have an exterior view of the building in that site. This is what the interactive panorama would have looked like if it had worked, and you could have moved around it to see if it's finished. No. Okay. Then this is a sectional image of the model. Again, using that section box in Revit to show the 3D view, but then to use that section box to kind of slice the side of the building off so that you start to view inside, then doing a render, getting a really good quality of kind of sunlight onto that model, and I think it's quite a powerful, quite a good quality image. Again, rendered at the full 16 megapixels allowed this student that this could be shown very large. It's got a lot of detail in it. That's the interior view that we rendered ourselves today. And then the same view, changing the sun position, so getting some strong shadows as opposed to this kind of overcast view of that room. And then here a kind of elevational view of the building, but doing it as a camera and rendering and getting the kind of good quality of reflections, getting some good depth into the building. Okay. So I've put those there just to kind of hopefully start you to think about the different ways that you can use this rendering capability to produce more than just those kind of obvious perspective interior views, but actually using it as exterior views, using it to create these kind of sectioned cutaway models. The power of Revit is, once you've got this model, you know, all of these images we've looked at here, you could produce within an hour, very, very quickly. If you then changed that model, you made some alterations to it, you could produce those renderings again in an hour. You know, it's very kind of rapid. And the great thing with this project was, because the student invested the time in that Revit model, and he got quite skilled with it, that he was making changes all the way through. So, for example, 2 weeks before the final submission, there was quite a significant change to part of this building, but that was okay, because he understood he could make those changes to make the building better, but he could still produce those renderings very quickly, whereas some other students who were working with sort of SketchUp and then taking it into Photoshop, Illustrator, you know, they had to say, well, I can't make changes now, it's too late. I'll never get my drawings finished. Okay, let's see if we're having any luck. No. That's annoying. Okay, I think I'm just going to give up on those. Okay. I mean, all I was going to do was show you it. If you go into the gallery and search, then you will find some interactive panoramas in there. Equally, I will. I'll send you the links to those panoramas. But if you click on that little filter funnel there, you can filter that by panorama. So these should all be interactive panoramas. So let's try one. Probably won't be any better. Oh, okay. Okay. So this one is working. So it's not a very high, it's quite a low resolution one actually, but that's the idea of the interactive panorama, that it will render multiple views for you and then it stitches them together so that you can orbit, look around the space, you know, look up, look down, and you know, you have that more kind of immersive feeling like you're in the space. I think you can. Okay, so that's the interactive panorama. The new stereo panoramas, I did try one with a pair of stereographic goggles on, and the new goggles, they're linked to motion. So as you move, the view moves with you. And I did try one, and I have to say it was quite an amazing experience actually. You really are convinced you're in that space. So I think, you know, this is the future. You know, I think you know, the technology exists now, but I think very soon we'll probably be you know, viewing architectural projects in 3D, stereographic, being able to walk through. The one I looked at, you could actually walk into the space, and it walked with you. It was quite impressive. Let's just see if there's any more good ones on here. Let's try that one. mean, you notice here, that's a really good quality material. Normally, with a textured wall like that, you could not let the eye get too close to it because it would look, it would look unrealistic. But I guess what they've probably done there is model these individual bricks, then put a texture on them, made sure that the textures are very different, or they've just maybe made a really good quality material. Normally that's kind of doesn't look very good. I mean, if you compare that with the door, where that timber effect repeats, and it's not really very, very convincing, I would say. Let's have a look around. Okay. And I mean, that's, that middle section, I think that's something to bear in mind. If you've not got good materials, just keep it in grey. Keep it in white, keep it in grey, and you can get away with it. Again, that texture outside is poor, and probably not something you want to see, but that is a fantastic texture there. You can look all the way over. You end up upside down. Okay. Oh, still upside down, aren't we? Okay. So, yeah, go away, have a play with that. They do work. Obviously, I don't know what's going on with my ones, but I just think it's a really interesting territory for designers, for architects, that we're moving from these kind of 2D paper visualizations into these much more kind of immersive simulations. Let's just have a look at this one. This looks good. If you were a paying customer, then if you rendered these in the highest resolution, then the quality is quite amazing. But that's not bad. That's pretty good. I mean, again, the quality of that concrete is fantastic. Okay. That's a good one. Yeah. If you hold Shift down, you can actually zoom in, zoom out. It's a bit temperamental, I have to say. But yeah. Okay. So we'll stop there. I really just wanted to introduce some of those tools that exist. They're not really, for the purposes of this module, we're more interested in simulating. We're not kind of so interested in producing great visualizations. But I think because those tools are kind of hand in hand, I think it's really good to know that those tools exist. Okay. Anybody got any questions before we stop?